This is the story of how I got to fly on board the mighty CUBANA IL-96 or Ilyushin 96, and it came with a few challenges. The IL-96 is an attempt to provide a successful successor of the Ilyushin IL-86. Looking fairly similar, the IL-96, however, is slightly shorter than the IL-86, has larger turbofan engines and offers seats for up to 260 passengers. Also, the IL-96 offers about double the range of the IL-86 with roughly 5,400 nautical miles. First time I got a taste of the IL-96 was when I booked my first ever trip to China. Back in the time when I had a bit less grey hair and I was about 20 kilos lighter. And who was I flying the IL-96 to China with? Well, you may have guessed it right. Ryanair. No, just kidding. It was Aeroflot, of course. And Aeroflot took me from Zurich to Moscow and then from Moscow on the IL-96 to Beijing. I didn't take too many pictures and almost no videos at all on this night flight back then, but I took a few more pictures on my flight back to Moscow a few weeks later. Although I must say I was lucky because I was not supposed to fly on the IL-96 on the return leg. Instead, a Boeing 777 was planned. But thanks to an aircraft change, I got to enjoy the perks and quirks of the IL-96 again. Well, that's what I call a fun equipment change, isn't it? Talking about perks and quirks, perks are certainly the very comfortable seats of the IL-96, the very spacious cabin, and the fact that flying on such a rare bird such as the IL-96, it's a highlight for sure, at least for most of the aviation geeks like me. Quirks I would consider the air fan, which you could not find overhead, but right in front of you. But it's not only an IL-96 feature or quirk, I think I also saw it on Tupolev aircraft. But enough of Aeroflot, since the story is about CUBANA IL-96 experience. By the way, if you're not too bored with this kind of videos and my face, consider subscribing to my channel. And also press the like button. And I have heard it's also good for my channel if you activate the notification bell. 2 years after my Aeroflot experience, I booked a trip to South America with CUBANA via Havana. The first routing was Madrid to Havana with a short stop in Santiago de Cuba. However, on this flight to Havana, the Spanish carrier Air Europa was operating the flight for CUBANA, so I missed out on the Ilyushin IL-96 and I got a Boeing 767 instead. Not too bad either. I arrived late night in Havana, where I stayed overnight in the terminal to save some money by not booking a hotel for just a few nightly hours. My next flight started early morning, so my almost sleepless night on the hard terminal floor lasted only a few hours. By the way, for these few hours in Havana, I personally had to show up at the Cuban embassy in my home country, which meant a 4-hour train ride each way. To get a transit visa, what a hassle, because I wasn't part of a tour package, where the visa is issued way more easily. Maybe nowadays it's hopefully a bit easier to enter this beautiful country. I haven't checked yet. Anyway, there she was, my first ever ride on the CUBANA IL-96, which will take me from Havana to Caracas this morning. We were taxiing on the runway, rolling past some aviation memories like the IL-62, IL-18 and a DC-10. Flight down south towards Caracas offered a stunning view of some Caribbean islands and the deep blue water below. And I truly enjoyed this flight. Also on CUBANA, as expected, the cabin is very spacious, which however cannot be said about the legroom. And also here, the perks and quirks are the same as with Aeroflot. Unfortunately, I didn't take a picture of the food that was served in economy class. But at least there was food. I took a picture of the food on one of my return legs, so we will come to that shortly. A few hours later, we were approaching Caracas in Venezuela, or at least Caracas Airport, as the city itself lies on the other side of the mountain range. I would say flying on the IL-96 only feels different to most other wide-body airliners in terms of the spacious feeling. Almost feels like flying in an indoor tennis court, minus the net, plus the seats. Otherwise, I wouldn't notice a difference in sound level or stability in the air. Especially the latter would be worrisome. I spent a few hours at Caracas Airport watching some indeed interesting planes and then a few weeks traveling South America before returning to Caracas for my journey back home. Fun fact while I was at Caracas Airport. I was recommended to exchange US dollars into bolivars, not at the airport money exchange office, but with some random guy in the terminal. Being an inexperienced and naive dude in his 20s, I did so, and of course I ended up being scammed, as my $100 bill was secretly exchanged into a fake $100 note, and I left with 0 bolivars. I only found out after my domestic flight that my $100 bill was fake. By looking at it more closely, it even showed a hidden middle finger on it. Well, luckily I was able to exchange that bill into bolivars anyway after landing, also with one of these dodgy exchange scammers, just at a different airport. Glad that the middle finger went to where it belonged. Anyway, let's go back to Caracas airport, where I was about to board this CUBANA IL-96 again, returning back to Havana. I was in economy class again, and the flight was fairly punctual, luckily, as I had some afternoon connecting flight. Again, the flight offered a fantastic view of the Caribbean Sea and some of its islands. I was told I needed a transit visa again, in order to transit at Havana airport. So about 1 week before this flight, I went to the Cuban embassy in Montevideo, Uruguay, because that was the country I stayed in the last, before returning to Venezuela and Cuba. 3 hours bus and taxi ride to the embassy. 10 minutes wait, I got the visa, and 3 hours back to Punta del Este, where I stayed with my dad. So 1 week forward, I landed in Havana, disembarked the mighty IL-96, went to the immigration officer, and then I was told that for transit I don't need a visa. Okay, after a few hours on the ground, I boarded a CUBANA IL-96 for the 3rd time on this trip. But this flight was different. For only approximately $200 more than economy class, I was able to get pampered in their business class. That was a no-brainer for me, especially since we are talking about a long transatlantic flight to Madrid. This was my first ever and probably last ever flight on an Ilyushin IL-96 in business class. A very blue business class, I must say. While the seat could not be turned into a flatbed, it was yet comfortable, and I even received a CUBANA amenity kit. The business class meals were fine, not served course by course, but all on one tray. Some prefer it like that, and some, for example me, prefer the course by course serving, at least on longer flights. The flight across the Atlantic was smooth, and we were approaching Madrid with a delay of about 1 hour. Back on the ground, a cabin announcement was made that the local time is 9 AM, if I remember correctly. I thought, great, that gives me enough time for my onward connection, despite the late departure from Havana. However, truth is that it was already 10 AM and not 9. And I found out about that the moment I wanted to drop off my luggage at the check-in counter, which was closed already. But luckily I was allowed to take my luggage with me through security and drop it off at the gate, and that way I made my connection. Anyway, this concludes my experience flying CUBANA IL-96 across the Caribbean and across the Atlantic, in economy and in business class. Thank you for watching. Till next time, bye for now.